Hi, I'm Damien Marie AtHope, an axiological atheist, and I am against hereditary religion. Welcome to the 7th Annual International Day of Protest Against Hereditary Religion. Now you may be wondering, what is hereditary religion? Well, here's what hereditary religion means to me. In a general expression, it is of what I see hereditary religion as such things as a parent basically forcing the child to have a religion. The religion that they choose, A, B, C, D, whatever, it really doesn't make a difference. The issue that I have is with the belief that because the parent already has a religion, that is the religion the child must have. And this isn't just offered as an idea that they can ponder and choose for themselves. What I'm referring to in hereditary religion is the belief that it is a requirement. It is a part of their heritage. In other words, that this is a forced faith. It's not really a chosen belief. In other words, simply, hereditary religion to me is an unchosen belief, in a sense, that is put onto the child. And this is done usually before the child is even old enough to understand what they're being told, to assess the validity of its, information, or even to be able to be, held accountable for a choice they could make or not make. So, this is really something that most, if not almost all, religious parents kind of do. Now, to some extent, just giving ideas is not the same as forcing. It's the belief, that the child, just because the parent already has a belief, that automatically it is expected that the child should have the same belief. There's a difference in, wishing someone to have, like, say, the same political party. It's not an expectation that there's no choice, that there's no thought, that it's just a requirement. So, like I said, this is something that's, common in, most religious persuasions, is to actually have the belief that you can basically push your worldview onto the child. And not just that you can offer it as an idea they can choose, but one that's a requirement. And so, while the religious world likes to claim, that their stuff is a belief, like they'll say, well, I believe, I have faith, but the question is, when did you start actually believing? And, to me, often it's just an issue of acceptance. In other words, someone in power said, hey, this is what you're to believe, and the child simply goes, okay. Or they're told over and over again, and eventually they just, come to that is the belief they should have. Without really even giving a chance to it being a belief. It's just a mere acceptance. So the religion does this with their, gods and with their ideas of religion that have been offered, to an unthinking child, so it's not even really a chosen belief. It's simply indoctrination and then agreement. Or agreement and then indoctrination. Because what's interesting is you don't really even need to read the Holy Book to supposedly, be fully indoctrinated into the religion, because it's all about faith. It's all about this magical quality of thinking that somehow is considered to be able to produce reality, substance, just because one thinks something, and one can think that, and certainly as a child, there's all kinds of beliefs that are not reality, but to force it onto a child and then call it a belief, it's just not the same thing. So we have to understand that they cannot assess as a child generally, the power of an argument to begin with. Most of the time, it's not even given a chance to be waiting until the child can even reason. they're usually, by the time I've seen, babies already have their religion, and babies are expected to, to be done baptisms and all kinds of things. So it's really, a little on their own thinking. And as a general rule, to me, it could be said that religion likes to push this magical thinking on the minds of children, especially for the goal of indoctrination. And to me, any child that's given a religion that's under 7 isn't even able to comprehend the difference because of reality and non-reality in a sense, because their mind already kind of has like a presupposition or a predisposition, to animistic, magical type thinking. And so also magical hypotheses and magical conclusions, and they're not really going to be sure about the differences, and their minds are being creative and trying to figure out the world. And so to me, it's upon us to, do something to ensure that, we give them the right. If people, I love how they always say, the freedom of religion, okay, extend that freedom of religion to your child. Give them the freedom to choose. So I want to address, the religious freedom, rights, which people think they have, and what are child rights. So in New York, in 2015, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the Freedom of Religion or Belief said that and called for all governments to be represented, that are represented at the General UN Assembly, to respect the religious practices by children and their families, and support families in fulfilling their role in providing an enabling environment for the realization of the rights of the child. Now, I think this is really interesting how they focus on the rights of the child, and I think it should be that the child itself has rights to its belief. Now, the thing that I have the issue with is the parent's belief. I don't know what age a child is expected to be believing and to come up with reasoned beliefs. But anyways, and it says every individual child has a right holder, or is a right holder in his or her own capacity. And so I consider this self-ownership rights, as recognized in Article 14 of the Convention on Rights of a Child, with the United Nations Special Rapporteur. And during the presentation in his report is when this stuff was stated. And it was on the rights of the child and their parents in religion and belief. So Article 14 of the United Nations on Rights of the Child guarantees the right to freedom of thought, which to me, then what you're saying is the child has a right to thinking. That doesn't mean the parent has the right to think for the child, tell the child what they're thinking, because how can that happen if the child has freedom of thought? And then also the child has a guaranteed right to freedom of conscience. Well, once again, that should be the conscience of the child and not the conscience of the parent. I'm not saying that the parent doesn't have a right to say their ideas, but it's the child's conscience that has the rights, just like the parent has the free right. And to me, they also say the guaranteed right to religion. Well, then that would also have to be the child's right to choose. And it says, of course, that they don't state that enough or clearly enough. So in this part of this, it's part of a series of information basically on rights. Article 14 is just one of the things. And so Article 14, number 1, states parents shall respect the rights of the child to freedom of thought. Now, it's very interesting. This is saying the parents are supposed to be doing this. I agree. Parents should be respecting the freedom of thought of the child. And then the parent, it also states, so the parents shall respect the child's right to conscience and to religion. So freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, and freedom of religion. So number 2 states, parents shall respect the rights and duties of the parent, and, when applicable, legal guardians to provide direction to the child to exercise his or her right in a manner consistent with the evolving capacities of the child. So to me, they're already saying that the parent is supposed to be providing direction to the child. But see, it's so that the child can exercise their right. It's not, to me, it's not saying right to indoctrinate a child. To me, Article 14, number 2 is basically saying that the parent shall respect this exercise of the child's right. So it's interesting how the parents, a lot of times I've seen in religious, they believe that they have the right, that it's not the right to help the child direct where the child decides, but that the parent has the right to decide for the child, and that they apply that to the child. So, but anyway, so it also, I like the fact that it says a matter consistent with their capacities. Well, I think that just in general, I think that I wish that the UN would say that in general, I mean, no child should be expected to choose their religion before 7, since they don't have the capacity to understand magic between non-magic, real between non-real, in a sense that comes later with cognitive abilities. So then, to me, I think another point that's important is of Article 14 is number 3, which is freedom to manifest one's religion or beliefs may be subject only to such limitations as prescribed by law and are necessary to protect the public safety, order, health, morals, and fundamental rights and freedoms. And I think this is really no limitations of the law. Well, so, I mean, if we make a law that parents can't, basically push their stuff on children, which I wish they really would, especially before 7, and allow the child the freedom to make an informed decision on their own. So anyways, I could go through, there's a couple different, like from the facts sheet on the summary of rights under the Convention of Child Rights for the UN is Article 1. I'll just go through it really quick. Is the definition of child rights. Then Article 2 is the non-discrimination. And this is about child rights. And Article 3 is the best interests of the child. Article 4 is the protection of rights. This talks about responsibilities of governments to ensure the child rights are respected, protected, and fulfilled. And I think that this should be something that validates that a child actually has religious freedom for themselves, not somehow like an extension of the religious freedom of the parent, and where the child is basically subjugated under the parent. Article 5 is parental guidance. Now, I'm going to read this fully just so we can understand. What does this mean? This is what they say for the UN. Governments should respect the rights and responsibilities of families to direct and guide their children so that they grow, they learn to use their rights properly. And their rights is the rights of the child. So it's all about helping the child facilitate the child's own rights. Which brings me back to the fact that a child should have the right to choose their own religion. The religious freedom should not be the religious freedom of the parent, but of the child itself. And to me, then go on in the Article 5, it says, helping children to understand their rights does not mean pushing them to make choices with consequences that they are too young to handle. How about not understanding a religion before 7 because they're not good at understanding magic from non-magic, and they shouldn't be making adult decisions like what they should have as their belief for the rest of their life, especially if they're not even informed or can't even read or read fully. I think they should at least be given that opportunity as just a basic right to freedom. So Article 5 encourages parents to deal with rights issues in a manner consistent with the evolving capacities of the child. You notice how it keeps being really about the child's right, not the parent's right. It's really about the parent's responsibilities and the child's rights. So the convention does not take responsibilities for the child away from the parents and give more authority to governments. It does not place on governments the responsibility to protect and assist families in fully fulfilling their essential roles as nurturers of the children. The rights experts also argue religious communities across the world to ensure respect for the freedom of religion or belief of the children within their teaching and communities practicing, bearing in mind always the status of the child as a rights holder. I think this is it's just a core thing that right here. It's really that the religions are supposed to, the parents are supposed to understand that the child's a right holder. Governments are supposed to understand that the child is a rights holder. And religions are to understand, in religious communities, that children are a rights holder. I think that this is like so clear and so important. I also want to address Article 12. And Article 12 is respect for the views of the child. Oh, this is something I think that some parents, especially religious extreme parents, have a problem with. Respect for the views of the child. When adults are making, this is from Article 12, when adults are making decisions that affect children, children have a right to say what they think should happen and have their opinions taken into account. This does not mean, this is still Article 12, this does not mean that children can now tell their parents what to do. This convention encourages adults to listen to the opinions of children and involve them in decision making, not give children authority over adults. Article 12 does not interfere with parents' rights and responsibilities to express their views on matters affecting their children. Now, I would agree with this. I mean, even in the sake of religion, that, I do believe that a parent has a right, to express their own thinking. I think that they have a right to tell the children how they believe or do not believe. I think that some people think that no child should ever be taught or told about a religion. I don't think that we should not tell children about things that are going on in the world. Or I don't think that a parent has a duty to not ever, express their opinions on things. I think that would be against the parents' rights themselves. I think that there's a big difference, though, in saying, I think this or I think that, or actually, imposing, your thinking onto the child. Especially when about something that's supposed to be involving religious freedom. Or a thinking and the ability to believe and for one to hold one's own beliefs. So to me it's really interesting too, is a lot of religions have rites of passage where they feel that, someone's fully becoming an adult, but they seem to not have that as a time when you finally start helping the child understand religion, you know. But usually they have, you know, kids going to practically, you know, religious preschools. I mean, so, and trying right then to teach them all the stories and get them all, you know, basically indoctrinated, and before they even have a chance to think about if it's something they want to believe. So, moreover, though, the convention in Article 12 recognizes that the level of the child's participation in decisions must be appropriate to the child's maturity level. Children's ability to form and express their opinions develop with age, and most adults will naturally give their views of teenagers, of course, more weight than those of a preschooler, as they should. Whether in the family, legal, or administrative decisions, this is still relatively true. So, then there's Article 13, and it's about freedom of expression. And I think this is a good one to address. You know, that children have a right to get and share information, which some religious parents like to control all information. You know, as long as the information is not damaging to themselves or others. Now, see, this is where some parents could try to say they were religious. They could try to say, well, you know, it's causing sin to view some information, like, say, evolution, that a religious parent doesn't want it. I mean, what's harm? You know, I mean, what's damaging? You know, I mean, so to me, you know, I think that they need to be, some of these things, they need to be clearer, because people like to bring in, especially to me when it comes to religious stuff, they like to bring in ambiguity and try to make, you know, bring in confusing things. But so in exercising, going back to Article 13, in exercising the right to freedom of expression, children have the responsibility to also respect the rights and freedoms and reputations of others. The freedom of expression includes the right to share information in any way they choose, including talking, drawing, or writing. Then Article 14 is freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. So I'm going to read it, since this is the one that matters the most, or in a sense, into this topic. Children have the right to think and believe what they want, to practice their religion, as long as they are not stopping other people from enjoying their rights. Parents should guide their children in these manners. You notice at the beginning it said, you know, the children's religion. Well, I always find this interesting. Well, what religion is the child? A lot of times they simply are the religion of the parent, because how is the child at some ages even choosing a religion? They're just accepting the thing that the religion their parents already have, or their family already has. But anyways, getting back to Article 14. The Convention respects rights and duties of parents in providing religious and moral guidance to their children. I think that's right there a real problem, because what's providing religious guidance and saying that why doesn't it say providing religious and moral guidance to the child, and then add, like it does in some of the other things, right? To the extent that the child can understand these expressions or the shared information. You know, I mean, it should say, really, to me, that these decisions require an appropriate level of maturity for the child, or something like that. So I think that's something that really should be addressed, and I hope change. Certainly clarification is required, because I think when you leave ambiguity, it's going to allow indoctrination. It's going to allow force. It's going to remove freedoms of the child. It's going to remove all these different things, the freedom of expression. It's going to remove, you know what I'm saying, the respect for the views of the child. It's gonna the child's protection of their rights. It's to me, it's going against non-discrimination because you're discriminating against the child's beliefs. It's to me, it violates so many of the things they say, and it's amazing how they're not clarifying it, probably for the protection of religious parents. But that means their rights over the children. Anyways, getting back to the Article 14. The Convention supports child's rights to examine their beliefs, but it also states that their right to express their belief implies respect for the rights of others. Now, at the same time, the Convention recognized that children mature and are able to form their own views. Some may question certain religious practices or cultural traditions. And to me, right there, they're basically saying that the children, have the right to come up with their own ideas. So I think that this is an important thing that, like it says here, parents should help guide their children in these manners. But it's also the rights of the child to choose and to question and to. So to me, all those are the child's rights. The rights to its own free choice. So let's move on now to Article 15, freedom of association. Another one of the important ones that to me has to do with really the child's rights. So children have a right to meet together, to join in groups and organizations as long as it does not stop other people from enjoying their rights. The exercise of the child's rights is the child's rights and responsibilities to respect the rights of others. So the child's supposed to respect the rights of others, and the parents and guardians, whatever, should respect the rights of the children. So Article 17 is access to information. And I think that a lot of religious parents especially are guilty of violating the access of information. In fact, I remember when I was a child, we didn't have a TV that we were allowed to watch. Dad had put it in his closet because he was religious. Didn't want us to be influenced by the world, by secular things. So, and didn't want us to really listen to radio. Everything, no TV, it really was trying to control the information. So, but it says here that children have a right to get informed. Children have a right to get information that is important to their health and well-being. Government should encourage mass media, radio, television, newspaper, and internet connection sources. So children should have a right to information. Anyways, it goes on to provide information that children can understand and not to promote material that can harm children. And I think that, once again, what is it to harm a child? If children are born gay and a religious book tells you that you are evil and sinful and, that your desires are worthy of hell, is that not causing psychological harm in the child? I think that, once again, to me, what's harm? Because, anyways, I'm going to go on. So, Article 17 goes on. Mass media should particularly be encouraged to supply information in language that minority indigenous children can understand. Once again, that children should be given what they can understand in a language they can understand. Children should also have access to children's books. And I think this is important that they say something like this, because I think some, parents do not think that, especially religious ones, that I didn't really remember reading a lot of children's book. I remember Christian children's book being read to me, but I mean, I think that there's a real problem with this information violation, and I wonder what in this question for this topic is, religion rights freedoms over the rights of children, and so I do not see how some of these child rights are not being violated by the supposed protection of the parents' religious rights. So anyways, Article 18 is the parental responsibilities and the state assistance. So it says both parents share responsibility for the upbringing of their children and should consider what is best for each child. Government must respect the responsibilities of the parents to provide appropriate guidance for their children. The convention does not take responsibilities for children away from the parents and give more authority to governments. It places responsibility on governments and provides supports for parents, especially parents outside work and home. And you have Article 19, which is protection from all forms of violence. So I think that some of the stuff that like spanking, I believe that spanking, the physical hitting of a child, is something that is quite prevalent in religious holy books and teaching, certainly more than the secular society is. And I think that, to me, things like that and forms of neglect and abuse, there's actual laws where if you're a religious parent, there's a religious exemption for child abuse. I think that should be done away with immediately. There's child abuse or there isn't. If it's child abuse for everybody else, it's still child abuse no matter what your religious conviction is. I think that giving them a ability to abuse and saying it's the parent's freedom to do this abuse because of their religion while violating so many of the child's rights, I think is just abhorrent to me. But let me go on. So this is from the UN Special Reporter, Hein Bernefield. I can't even pronounce it. Anyways, I'm sorry, not very good at names. So, violations of freedom of religion or belief often affects the rights of the children and their parents. Children, especially girls, from religious minorities, for example, are abducted and forced converted to another religion, through forced early marriage especially. Religious community leaders should support the elimination of harmful practices inflicted on children, including by publicly challenging problematic religious justifications for such practices wherever they may occur. And this was the UN Special Reporter stating this. It goes on. With regards to possible conflicts, the Special Reporter stressed the need for due diligence by states in dealing with conflicts of human rights concerns, ensuring non-discriminatory family laws, which I think that's a very interesting thing, because non-discriminatory against the parents' rights, the child's rights, everybody's rights, or only the parents' rights when you say family right law or rights. Anyways, and the settlement of family-related conflicts and combating harmful practices. While in many situations of violence, the rights of the child and the rights of his or her parents may be affected in conjunction, it is not always the case. The interests of the parents and children are not necessarily identical. And I am happy that he says that, because I think that is the biggest point right there, that the parents' or the children's rights are not necessarily identical, including in the area of freedom of religion or belief. Yeah. So this is a special reporter stating this, and I do agree. That the interests of the parents are not the same as being identical to the interests, or should be interests of the children when it comes to freedom of religion belief. The expert highlighted that parents or legal guardians have a right or duty to direct a child in the exercise of his or her freedom of religion belief. Such direction should be given in a manner consistent with the evolving capacities of the child in order to facilitate a more and more active role of the child in exercising his or her freedom of religion or belief, thus paying respect to the child as a right holder from early on. The parents are not obligated to provide a religiously neutral upbringing in the name of the child's right on a future open future. And I would agree, like I already stated, that I don't think that a child has to be given a neutral world of belief, whether it's political or sports team or, someone's favorite, imaginary beings or movies or anything. But you don't need to be neutral. What I think you need to not do is force a child to choose a religion, to choose a sports team, to choose their favorite movie, to choose things that they're not yet, ready to make full choice of, because they don't have the full understanding, the full capacity to understand. And so to expect them to have a full choice on their, freedom of religion or belief, is not really appealing to their freedom. So the UN Special Reporter's research discusses issues related to the socialization of religious socialization, religious instruction with the family, and participation in religious community life, religious education in schools, the voluntary display of religious symbols in schools. I don't know what they're talking about there. I guess that means the child liked to wear it, I guess. And then respect for the evolving capacities of the maturing child. I think this is really important. And then the non-discrimination, the basis of religious belief. And I think this goes for the child, being respected if they choose to believe or not believe. And I don't think that an atheist parent has to not talk about their atheism. I don't think they should make a child choose. And I don't think a religious parent should have to not talk about their personal beliefs if they choose. But I think they draw the line that the child should be allowed to also freely choose. So, thank you for listening to me, and take care.